What do you do when you live in the shadow of your country's most famous and most celebrated composer? I'm the classical nerd, and today we're talking about Erkki Melartin. Erkki Melartin was born in Finland in 1875 in an area that would later become part of the Soviet Union. His mother died when he was very young. Though he studied, lived, and worked in Helsinki for most of his life, he continued to be inspired by the rural aspects of his upbringing. He was a rather sickly man and went in and out of sanatoriums throughout his life, often ignoring the advice of doctors who told him to get some rest in order to work full tilt on his compositions. In addition to his musical activities, he was a Renaissance man. He collected stamps, and he loved painting, and he loved traveling. He studied under the same teachers as Jean Sibelius, his senior by a decade. Melartin considered himself first and foremost a composer, but he was also professor of music theory at the Helsinki Conservatory, and was a pretty good conductor. In fact, he conducted the premieres of all 6 of his symphonies. But he struggled to have his music known outside of his homeland, an honor which fate seemed solely to bestow on one man, and that man was Jean Sibelius. It doesn't help that Sibelius is still considered the best Finnish composer of all time. Melartin was unable to publish many of his larger pieces. In fact, during his lifetime, the only orchestral piece that was published was his 6th symphony, and that was on the funds of friends. The pieces that were published during his lifetime were small piano pieces or songs. In fact, Melartin wrote 4 times as many songs as did Sibelius. His songs were often very complex, and he didn't just use his native Finnish for the poetry that he'd set. He'd expand to other languages. His piano music is also much more idiomatic for the instrument than Sibelius, as Melartin was more of a hands-on pianist than Sibelius. Though living in the shadow of Sibelius, according to many, Melartin was not influenced by the older composer's style. In fact, he was able to forge a unique idiom entirely his own. If one looks at Melartin's symphonic output, one does not see an immediate kinship with Jean Sibelius. You see an immediate kinship with the music of Gustav Mahler. And aspects of his 3rd symphony exhibit similarities with the orchestrational techniques of Arnold Schoenberg. But as Sibelius had done in his rousing nationalistic piece Finlandia, Melartin was no stranger to using Finnish folk tunes in his music, which made him popular among the Finns, but was a dangerous game to play as far as the Russian censors were concerned. There was apparently no animosity between the 2 composers, which is good to see. In fact, Melartin dedicated his Opus 52 piano suite, The Melancholy Garden, to "My dear big brother Jean." Sibelius responded kindly and praised the suite, saying to Melartin that "You have there found a very apt expression for solitude. I understand you very well." Melartin's fame was never wide outside of Finland, and his compositions were all but completely forgotten after his death. In the minds of conductors and performers, and then thus the ears of the listening public, Sibelius was the only Finnish composer of worth from that era. There were many Sibelius champions, but no Melartin champions to speak of in the post-World War II years, which led to decades of obscurity. But Melartin's music has recently regained traction, especially in Finland, where scholars and musicians have taken another look at his music and even begun the Herculean task of editing and publishing the 5 published symphonies in his catalog. This led to a revival and re-examination of Melartin's entire compositional catalog that continues to this day.